urban planners need to stop using Streetmix. This prolific street section builder is something myself and many other street designers have used for years, but times have changed. Welcome to another episode of Inspired Infrastructure, where I normally talk about outdated roads. This time it's about an outdated tool that's being used to plan and design those roads. In this episode, I want to highlight some of the critical shortcomings of Streetmix by using beyond typicals to recreate a random Streetmix section. Literally random. I pulled a random number, put it into the Streetmix hyperlink, and got a section called South Willamette Street. Then I got to work recreating this exactly as is in beyond typicals to create a 3D photorealistic version of that Streetmix street. While doing so, I immediately noticed some problems. For one, Willamette Street's designer did something I used to do to show trees and light poles on a parkway section. They had to split it into two half sections next to each other so that the trees and lights would overlap in the Streetmix diagram. This is a pretty common Streetmix workaround, but it makes the labels pretty hard to follow. It's a 4-foot wide parkway, but showing it as two 2-foot wide parkway sections makes it kind of confusing for someone who's not familiar with that workaround. Moving outward, I've added street-level bike lanes like they show up in Streetmix, then 5-foot sidewalks and some mixed-use multi-story buildings just outside of those. I even kept one black and one green bikeway to match the Streetmix section, even though that was probably user error. Now I'm going to duplicate this model in Beyond Typicals and make some realistic refinements to the section, which looks like a relatively complete street already. First things first, I need to add in some curb and gutter. This is usually a mandatory design element required on urban streets, which separates the roadway from the sidewalk and provides some stormwater drainage infrastructure. One of my biggest frustrations with Streetmix is the lack of curb and gutter altogether. This forces designers like me to mentally fill in the gaps of how that 2 or 3 feet fits into the section, but without it, it's potentially misleading to anybody else seeing this Streetmix section. Now that the curb and gutter is in the section, I can show how this influences the space around it and adjust this design accordingly. I can't just add 1.5 feet on both sides. That would make this section wider than what's in Streetmix. So I have to reduce other sections to insert this 1.5 feet. So what I'm going to do is narrow the asphalt lane next to it by 1 foot and then reduce the 4-foot parkway section by 6 inches, and that gets me the 1.5 feet of space for the curb and gutter. That alone is a big deal. A travel lane that's only 9 feet of asphalt might not be legal in certain jurisdictions. And also, this parkway that was 4 feet and has trees on it, now at 3.5, might be too narrow to plant trees in some cases, or maybe a certain type of tree needs to be planted while you have to restrict others. Next, I'll take a look at these bike lanes. In the original Streetmix design, the bike lane is placed between the parkway and the sidewalk down at the same height as the road lanes, which means there is a 6-inch vertical face on both sides of that bike lane. That is a pretty gnarly safety hazard for the cyclists. If riding too close to the curb, their pedals might scrape the sidewalk, or worse yet, if a tire hits that vertical face, it could seriously injure the rider. To mitigate this, I'm going to add some beveled or mountable curbs along the sides of each bike lane and then raise the bike lanes up a little bit so that they're on an intermediate level between the vehicular lanes and the sidewalk. These sloped curbs are going to delineate that space better for bikes and also gently guide an errant cyclist back into their lane if they do stray out of that lane. Finally, this is just too much gray concrete. I'm going to assume that a city investing in a complete street like this is going to make it attractive for the people that live and work along this corridor, so let's change that parkway surface to some nice brick paving. Yet another thing that you can't do in Streetmix. If you're enjoying this series, please like, comment, and subscribe. I've got a new YouTube channel and social media accounts devoted just to this series, so check out inspiredinfrastructure.com for more. Thanks for watching.